fiction, science fiction, horror, fantasy, crime, LGBT, thriller.
You have now entered the House of Mystery with your hosts, Eric Shapiro, David North Martino, John Copenhaver, and Al Warren. Heard on KTP 106.5 FM Los Angeles,
102.3 FM Riverside,
and 105.0 AM Palm Springs.
Okay, welcome back into the House of Mystery, and of course I'm Al Warren, and joining me as co-host today we've got Mr. John Copenhaver. How are you doing, John?
I am doing fabulously.
Yeah, I've heard that. Of course, what else would you be? Even when you're not fabulous, you're fabulous.
I know, I can't help it. It just seems
the sun is glaring off.
right.
They're going to have to powder your forehead, too, like mine. I can't believe that. Well, so we've got another guest of yours this week. That's a friend of yours. It's someone that you've been hanging out with a lot, hobnobbing in the big events and all the ones you socialites get invited to, and big celebrities and stuff like that, and, me, nobody calls.
Oh, I'll call Al. I'll give you a ring.
Yeah, I know. It's all right. I'm not really fussy on people anyways, we know. Well, so we've got one of the stars of the Last Crime little group that you had there. And so Kellye Garrett, thank you for coming on the show.
Hi, thank you guys for having me.
Kellye, so what's it like being an honor in, in a mystery group of mystery writers?
Do you mean like Left Coast Crime?
Yeah.
For those who don't know, Left Coast Crime is one of the 3 big mystery conferences that we have. And so we just had our first one in 2 years recently. And I was lucky enough to be asked to be the Toastmaster. So it was fun to see everybody. And but it was also like, a lot because I have been sitting in my sweatpants, for the past 2 years. So I kind of feel like I went from like 1 to like 100 in like a weekend, I guess you could say. So, but it was fun. I got to hang out with John a little bit and see a lot of just really cool people that I've only seen on screens the past 2 years. So,
yeah, and after a big event like that, then you realize how much it's better to be on screen. Well, no, so what does a Toastmaster do in one of these events?
Basically, I was the host for the event. So we had like an opening ceremony where I got to announce the Left Coast Crime. They had the Lefty Awards, their nominees. So John was one of the nominees. I got to announce him and the other nominees. And then we have an awards banquet where I got to do a little speech and do a toast and, just basically just, I don't know, like be the MC of the evening, I guess. So
you're like Chris Rock.
Yes, but I didn't make any jokes to get me slapped. So at least no one came up and slapped me.
John didn't go up and slap
they
you.
wanted to.
When John lost, John lost, so he didn't come up and slap you.
Someone made
no,
that
he
joke
didn't.
to me. During the thing, someone made that joke to me.
Oh, well, so you're handing out the cocktails is what you're doing.
Or just telling people to drink the cocktails. So.
Wow, that's quite an honor in a sense, that people think highly of you. Is it important that other crime writers or people in your genre appreciate the work you do?
I mean, I feel like I'm cocky if I'm like, oh, that's so important. I think it's interesting because I've only been really, if you think about it, around for 5 years. My first book came out in 2017. I've only had 3 books out during that time. And so I'm honored that people respect me, I guess, because even from the beginning, I was just very outspoken on certain things, and I think not that other people weren't outspoken. I was basically, when it comes to diversity and inclusivity, I was very outspoken. Like I was lucky to win 3 major mystery awards my first year. I won the Anthony, the Agatha, and the Lefty. And for 2 of my 3 speeches, I talked about diversity. So it's always a risk you kind of shine that light on people or that mirror back of them to see how people react, and of course some people don't react great, but for the most part, people were very, happy that I brought up these important topics. So.
Yeah, I think it's good. I mean, it's good to be different or shine a light on something that maybe isn't always focused on. It's always, sometimes it's a challenge, and you're always going to get a little bit of bite back, so to speak, or someone staring at you or something. But, I think in general, most of the people want to do the right thing and go the right way. So I think it's good,
Yeah, but it's always so tricky, though, when it comes, I think, when it comes to diversity and inclusivity and, race and, homophobia, things like that, it's tricky because it can be an uncomfortable conversation. And I think when you're straight and cis and white, you're not used to being uncomfortable. And the irony is that the rest of us are uncomfortable a lot of the times, and so that's the tricky thing is having to deal with that uncomfort for some people who aren't used to it. So.
Yeah, well, when you're in a situation like that, a minority situation like that, it's easy to become strong and to deal with confrontation and dislike. Like we become much stronger earlier and over the years by facing so many challenges. But you're right, a typical straight white guy is not really used to dealing with that, or dealing a lot with their own sensitivities or feelings. Yes. So it's going to make people uncomfortable, but I think it's a bumpy road that we need to take.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? Because that's how they overcome it themselves, by them facing that same challenge that we faced earlier in our lives and still do now. Right. I think it hopefully it makes, even if it only makes half of them aware of it, it's a step forward at a time. I think the only thing we need to do, I mean, not necessarily you, but I think as and in this situation, I think we need to not, there's a lot of hate going on around these situations. I prefer not to hate people that get themselves in an uncomfortable situation, even though they're trying to help. Or they're trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, I don't think I hate them. I think it's tricky. I think sometimes people think I'm outspoken. I think it's funny because if you see me, I'm like 5'4" and very smiley. But I think people are intimidated by me sometimes because I'm so outspoken. They're, but I do try to, I put a lot of thought in how I say things. And I think it's easy, especially with social media, to just jump in and kind of try to shame people or make them feel bad. And my goal is not to do that. I know that, I don't want people to get defensive. So I do put a lot of thought, in how I say things. So.
Yeah, but and that's good. I'm very much that way, and I'm considered to be a little bit colorful or aggressive too. And some people are definitely intimidated by me, but I think it's not so much that it's me. It's probably not so much that it's you. They're intimidated by the well thought out words you say.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's right.
That gets put out in the air, and it's like it's there. You can't avoid it. It's not, and so it's usually more about the subject than the person. You just happen to be the one saying it, and then they're kind of, and yeah. So, but it's a good thing. Like I said, you're doing a good thing in several ways. That's fantastic that you're doing well in the mystery world. I mean, was there a certain point in your life when you decided that this is what you wanted to do, was write?
I've wanted to write since I was 5 years old. I wanted to write a book, and I was just afraid to do it. And so I kind of took the very roundabout way where I was a journalist and I was a TV writer. Even now I have a day job where I work in communications. And so it was very roundabout. So I've always made my money actually writing in some form, but it took a long time to actually be brave enough to start a book. So.
Did you feel a little bit of pressure? But, you're saying you do a day job in communications and you're writing and making a living, and you want to jump out there in your first book. Did that make it even more pressure to make sure that the book was good?
I don't know. I think honestly, ironically, I think to me having a day job is a great safety net, actually. It's interesting. So I had my first 2 books on a mid-sized publisher, and they closed right when I was working on my 3rd book. And there were people who were with the publisher who was like, why don't you just give them that 3rd book? And I did not want to. And I think because I did have that safety net of, I have a day job. So this is not, if I don't give them the book, it's not money missing for me, which I think I might have felt differently if I was a full-time writer at that point and I needed that money, so I think it lets me kind of be able to kind of think about career long-term versus like, oh, I got to eat next month,
Oh, yeah. That's what, I keep working at the Walmart greeting people at night. That's how I, just in case it doesn't work out, right? I got the job there from John. He,
Well, you do love people so much, I thought,
Yeah, that's funny. They tell me to tackle anybody, I think, stealing stuff. So I'm there. It's a good job.
I mean, my Walmart is very much about the check your receipt and in the bag before you can leave. So I believe you.
I just want to see what people are buying. I'm just snoopy. But when the reason I bring up the awards or the show, the lefties and stuff, is because for me, I mean, I'm in the true crime area and I write nonfiction, and a lot of times the first books I wrote, you get people that read it and they say things and all that, and good things, bad things, whatever. And but one of the most important things to me, one of the things that it sort of excited me the most, was when a really well-known true crime writer, had actually wrote a review on one of my books, and it was really good. I mean, that made me feel really good. Not that I was ever trying to impress him or any other writers. It was just fascinating that someone that's established and considered to be a good writer actually thought what I did in a book was good. So that's sort of why I bring it up. I'm just wondering if that in itself, is it important that people that are kind of established or good turn around and say, wow, you've really written a good book?
I mean, obviously, I'm lucky that I have some people who I've admired forever who have read the books and like them. I think if I thought about other people reading my books, I would not write them. I'd be too intimidated, So I think even now, I just had my 3rd book, Like a Sister, come out last month, March 8th. And it still amazes me that it's a book, in my mind, it's still this Word document that I, opened up for 2 or 3 years and worked on. And so I think I have to look at it still as that Word document for me. Otherwise I get too intimidated and scared. I don't read reviews, I don't go on Goodreads. Even if people tag me on reviews on Instagram, I'll just respond thank you so much. I don't read reviews, but thank you so much for reading them. So I kind of have to operate in this bubble. Otherwise, I think I would scare myself.
Yeah, it's something you have to get used to because, it's, I don't so much now. I'll go and look at the top of my name at Goodreads and it'll say 800 and some reviews, and it'll be let's say 4 out of 5 or, whatever. And you're like, okay, that's great. Good enough. I don't need to get into the details.
Yeah, I mean, because I'm the type of person that, you could say five good things and 1 bad thing, and of course the 1 bad thing, I'm they hated the book, so that's why, just from a self-care perspective, it's just best for me to avoid all reviews. And that's, I said, I appreciate them very much, and I'm happy people care enough about the book to write them, but just from my own mental space, I can't read them. So
Yeah.
I do hope they're all good.
Yeah.
I tend to, look at reviews in different ways, but I think that are they going to help you as a writer? Is like my biggest question. And if they don't help, then there's no point in reading them.
Right. So do you read all your reviews, John?
No, I don't. In fact, I just don't even look at Goodreads. I will scan Amazon reviews. If it's a professional reviewer, book reviewer that's taken the time to publish, yes, I do read those. And I often find those to be the most useful because they're really engaging with the book, in a sort of, in a professional sense, not just as a casual reader. And that, not that there aren't wonderful, casual readers that write beautiful reviews. In fact, there are. But I think it's just that a lot of them are just kind of like, I'll have all these embedded, agendas, objectives, and writing the kinds of reviews that they write, good or bad, And it doesn't really tell you how to write a better book the next go around, which seems like the only thing. I can't really do anything about the book that you have out now. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I always just find out where they lived, and then I go to the Walmart and I pretend to be the shopper, and I fix them good.
If I see you at my Walmart, I know what's going on.
Now, your new book here, you're talking about Like a Sister, that just came out in March. Let's talk about the basic premise. What is someone going to read about in that book?
Sure. So basically, I got the idea from a New York Daily News headline about a pregnant reality star found dead in the Bronx with cocaine and no pants on, which I thought was very disrespectful headline, but very on brand for the Daily News. And so I was completely fascinated with this idea. And I was kind of like, what's the story? Is it a PI novel? Like, what is it? And one day I was walking down the street by Rockefeller Center and I said, oh, she was going to see her sister and never made it. So that's the story. It's from the point of view of Lena Scott, who has been estranged from her sister for 2 years, who's this glamorous reality star named Desiree Pierce. And all she knows is her sister was coming to see her at 5 a.m. and she did not make it. And she feels guilty that something is going on with her sister and she wasn't there for her. So she starts looking into what was going on with her the past, few months before she died. It makes her kind of plunge into a world she does not want to be in, which is the world of her family, because she also has a really weird relationship with their father, who's Mel Pierce, who is kind of a really well-known hip-hop mogul who Lena feels left her when he left her mom when she was little. So it's got a lot of family drama, plus, what I think are some good twists and turns. And it's got some funny stuff in there, too, even though it's a more serious book than my series was.
So, Kellye, I know that you spent a stint in Hollywood, and, I'm curious about how that helped you, or maybe at times was a challenge to you in writing your books. I'd say that, somewhat from experience, I'm teaching students at VCU right now. A lot of them are in the film department, and a lot of them are writing scripts, and so I'm getting these very kind of scripty manuscripts. So I'm curious. I think I'm personally a bit fascinated with the relationship between sort of translating something from a screenplay to a novel.
Yeah. So I worked in Hollywood for 8 years. I got my master's degree in screenwriting from USC, which I think film school in the country, and many will agree. And I spent a year on the TV show Cold Case. And with television, you have a very set time limit. You have about, I think, 42 minutes if you count commercial breaks. And so you don't have a lot of time to dilly-dally. Like, you just can't have a character spend 2 minutes walking down the street admiring trees, because every scene has to move the story forward. And so it's very plot heavy. And also they had something called act outs, which is the last scene before the commercial break, because they want you to sit through commercials. So they'll always end it on a climactic moment. And so I kind of feel like my books are very plot heavy, and I try to end, I call them chapter outs, because I try to end every chapter on a climactic moment to make hopefully the reader say, oh, I just want to stay up and read one more chapter. On the flip side, I suck at description. I think I realized when I listened to the audiobook that I did not describe like half my characters because the voices she used were actually not the voices in my head of what the person was like. And so I have to really work hard at describing a room, because with a screenplay, you don't really have to describe it because it's a visual medium, so you can see it. You know, the screenplay is not a finished product. The movie's a finished product, whereas a book is the finished product. So I want to be able to I work really hard at trying to, like, okay, describe the room, Kellye, or, you know, describe what the person looks like or what they sound like. So that's what I struggle with. And I think that's from the screenwriting background. So.
You know, what I've observed in my students is that they have trouble getting into the consciousness of the characters, their point of view characters. You know, they want to write it sort of, they'll describe the scene, and of course, great dialogue, but then they will enter the consciousness of the character, which is like the thing that fiction can do that screenplays can't really, you know. Was that ever a struggle for you, or did that come more naturally?
I just write first person, and I tend to write first person past, which to me is a more introspective, you know, voice. I think even first person present, you're actually more in the moment. They don't really have time to sit and reflect on things because they're experiencing it in the moment. Whereas first person past, they're reflecting on what happened, and they can kind of look at it like a memory. And so I try to do that. I try to, you know, get into the brain and the thought. I don't always succeed because sometimes things are in my head that I don't put on the page, and I have to give my editor, Helen O'Hare at Mulholland Books, credit. You know, I'm a Black woman. I write about Black women, and I understand Black women, you know, because that's my mom and my sister and even my niece. And there'd be times where my editor, Helen, who's white, would be like, I don't understand why Lena is reacting this way, you know. And to me, I'm like, well, that's just how we react to things, you know. And but I was great because I was like, I have to make sure the reader understands why she's not crying, you know, why she hasn't cried yet, why she's so focused on figuring this out, and why she's not letting herself be vulnerable or emotional. And so that was a struggle for sure, and it was not there on the first draft, you know, and probably on the second draft too, but you know, the finished product, I'd like to hope and think that it is on the page where, you know, even if you don't agree with Lena's reactions to things, you understand why she's reacting that way. So.
Absolutely.
You know, how do you actually see your characters? Like, do you see them like in your mind, or do you hear them, hear their voice? And I ask that because a lot of writers will say that they'll describe their characters and see them in a vision or something, or hear them and stuff like that. What's your situation? I'm
like not that. It's so funny. Like, I think it's funny when they're like, oh, they spoke to me and they came fully formed. Like, that's not me. I had to work at her. I know what she looks like because I wasted a lot of time not writing, trying to figure out what she looked like, what actress. So she looks like Tessa Thompson to me with freckles. And I did a lot of character work. Like, I do the Myers-Briggs. I did Myers-Briggs for her and for her sister and for another character who's a sister's best friend who Lena has like this jealousy of. Her name is Erin. So I definitely did a lot of character research. And some might say I did it. Some didn't want to write the book. I was just wasting time. But I like to think it helped.
Do you use people in your life as an influence, let's say, or inspiration of your characters, or perhaps you go out to the coffee shop and see people and pick up conversations, or you hang out at the Walmart maybe?
Next to you. No, I don't. It's funny. I think my family wishes that I was like, yeah, that's based on my mother. But no, I don't. I mean, I think I don't think anyone's based on anyone in particular. I think they're based on ideas, you know, and maybe like a mix of people. Certain things I might take from one person or the other, but like there's no one where I'm like, oh, this person is definitely, this person. They might be inspired with certain elements, but no one was ripped from this book and taken. Even with like I said, it was based on a daily news headline, but the character of Desiree is definitely not based on the woman who passed away at all. It was more the headline that inspired me. So no, it's all in my head. It's all me, Al. It's all me.
Well, I always wonder about that because it's amazing some of the stories that people can come up with in that, and reality is certainly a little bit of a fiction in life. There's so many weird things going on around us all the time, and so much to choose from. So, do you actually take things that happen in the news and sort of maybe that inspires your characters? Like you look at your character and decide how they would react if this happened? Is it kind of that way of doing it?
But I it's funny, I do, all my stories, I'm not super creative, so all my stories are based on like news headlines and, or even if you don't think it's directly, like I think, if you look at Hollywood Homicide, which is the first book in my debut, which was also the first book in a series, the Detective by Day series, there is a group in there that's robbing celebrities that was actually based 10 or 15 years ago. There was this group of people, of these like teenagers who were robbing celebrities. So that was based on that. And then in the second book, Hollywood Ending, there was a publicist who was leaving an award show event, and unfortunately she got shot. And so that was the basis for the murder mystery in Hollywood Ending. And as I mentioned, with like a sister was based on a daily news headline. I will say my next book, the general idea is something that I thought of all by myself, but there's still elements like the Gabby Petito case is actually strongly influencing the book I'm working on now. So like you said, I think, truth is always stranger than fiction, as they say, that cliche. And so I definitely will look at that and be like, oh, that's a book. And how do I take that idea and put it in this world of this Black woman dealing with this issue and, modern day America, I guess.
Yeah, John was really big in van life. You can always talk to him about it. Now, because the news headlines and so many things are important, it seems like, and do you actually have a subtext or a some sort of theme or something that you want the reader to get from the book besides the entertainment value?
Here's a tricky thing for me. I'm curious what you guys think about this. I think the struggle with being a marginalized person writing books or just entertainment and period is that media, a lot of readers want place this premium on it has to be about racism or homophobia or XYZ, and they expect to use our books to learn about something. And Jasmine Guillory, who is this really amazing Black woman who writes romances, said that she has a romance, and this white woman said to her, "You missed the opportunity to teach me about racism." And like I said, she writes romance. And so the fact that you expected a romance novel and you're mad because you didn't learn about racism, I think is a lot to put on people of color and queer people when our straight, cis, white counterparts they can just write a book. So my goal is always to write a beach read that happens to have a Black woman in it. Having said all that, I am writing about Black women, and it would not be a true experience if I did not cover microaggressions. There's no one's going to call Lena the N-word or just have overt racism, that we're all just so upset about in it. However, she gets underestimated because she's a Black woman. Or when she's in a strange place and a cop comes up to her, she's going to react differently because she's a Black woman in a strange place dealing with a cop. So I don't set out necessarily to teach anybody anything. I just set out to share what I hope is an authentic Black woman in America in 2022, 2020, whatever year the book set in, experience. So.
Yeah, I don't think you necessarily have to set out to do like a lot of times subtext just come up. You're writing and you're going through the experience and the book ends, but there was some sort of meaning that was in it. Sometimes it just happens organically.
Yeah, I think that's what would happen with me. I would say that there's definitely things like that, and I think it's what I like to think is organic. I talk about the idea of the strong Black woman a lot in the book that I did not have in the earlier drafts, and I put in because Helen, my editor, was like, I don't understand why she's reacting certain ways. And I'm like, that's that strong Black woman. So I definitely, I do have those moments in there. So. Yeah.
You're gonna personally react to things even in the story that you're writing, right? So
yeah.
You've got to have that expression somewhere, right? I think.
Yeah.
But so now when you say you're writing a series, or do you actually, when you write a series like that or something like, are you an outliner? Do you sit down, outline kind of your ideas and kind of know where it's going to begin and kind of how your outcome is, and then you kind of fill that in, or are you just by the moment?
Definitely a super outliner. Like 25 pages, and then I'll still throw out the third act. And every time I do it, the blank page scares me, and so like to me, the safety net is the outline. So I'm a super outliner for sure.
So now your series, when you write a series, they stand alone. Like a person doesn't have to start at the beginning; they can pick up at any part of the series.
Well, the series only had 2 books in it, and so yeah, I would like to think that if you picked up Hollywood Ending, you would be able to jump right in. I hope I tried to explain what Dana's situation was so you can jump in for sure. So
now, where do you get your inspiration from? It's kind of a corny question, but it doesn't have to be other writers. Do you sort of listen to music, or do you watch movies, or do you what van life? I don't know.
I mean, like, anything like stuff fascinates me. So it could be anything and anywhere that I get an idea from, I'm assuming that's what you mean by inspiration. It could be anything, I got the idea for the book I'm working on right now because I went on a writer's retreat at a friend's house in Baltimore. So it could be anything, I think it's best when I don't try to find an idea, I might, like I said, see the Daily News headline and be like, ooh. Or with the Hollywood Homicide, which is the first book in my my debut in the Day series, I was driving past a billboard offering a $15,000 reward for information on a murder. And at the time I was dead broke. And I was like, oh, I should try to solve that. And then I was like, oh, that's such a horrible idea. Like my mother would kill me. I wouldn't be on the billboard next. So but I was like, oh, that's a great idea for a book. And so that's what the Day books are about. It's this woman, this actress who's kind of broke and lost, and her family's about to lose their house. And she realizes she drives past this billboard for information on a hit and run, and realizes she drove past the hit and run. So she's like, ooh, let me try to just remember something about the car so I can get this money. And the next thing you know, she's like running down the street in her Louboutins chasing bad guys. So.
Your book sort of changed a little bit in tone from the Hollywood Homicide and Hollywood Ending to, I guess, more of a psychological suspense. Is that? Yes. I mean, I know people have referred to those first 2 books as cozy. I don't personally think they're cozies, but I don't know what you think about that. But there was sort of a shift, right? And I'm curious about why you went that direction, and talk us through that a little bit.
I don't mind. If people want to call my book a cozy, it's fine. If they don't want to call it cozy, it's fine. You call whatever you want. But yeah, so when my publisher closed while I was writing book 3 in the series, I kind of was like, oh, at the time, I wasn't really sure, honestly, what I wanted to do next anyway, because I had a 3-book contract. And I was kind of like, oh, well, the decision has been made for me. And so I kind of was like, oh, this could be a career reset. And I knew a lot of people like Rachel Halsell Hall and Jess Lowry, of course, like the GOAT is like, Laura Littman, who went from writing a series to moving on to standalones. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't really think there was a lot of, I'd been reading a lot of domestic suspense, and there was not a lot of Black women stories in there. There's some people like Kate Holohan was doing it, and Rachel Halsell Hall was transitioned at that time. But I was like, oh, well, what if I try to write a more standalone domestic suspensey book? But again, it's about a Black woman, so it can't have a lot of the tropes that you see in domestic suspense. A lot of domestic suspense is this white woman in the suburbs, and of course she's like, her husband, she can't trust her husband, she's lost her kid, this and that. She's super nosy with her neighbors. And that's not, Black women acting like that is not going to get the same reaction and sympathy as white women counterparts do. And so I knew I did not want to write a woman in the suburbs. I wanted to write a woman in the city who was single, because that's me. But I still wanted to have the tropes of, good twist and family drama and like a really interesting first person narrative. So it definitely has those tropes, just from a decidedly Black woman perspective.
So do you ever, I guess, in your writing process, are you the type that can just sit down and write? Like, can you say, well, there's nobody here between 11 and 3 today, or I've got Saturday off, so I'll sit down and write? Can you just do it like that, or do you have to be in a mood?
I have to be in a mood. I am trying to force myself to be in that mood. I think one of the cool things about, the pandemic is that so much stuff went online with like Zoom and, things like that, where I have been doing a lot more sprints. I have more time because I'm not commuting to work. So I would spend time sprinting with friends, and even Zoom sprinting with friends, which is great because it's like you kind of chit chat a little bit. Then you spend 25 minutes writing. Then you can talk about what you wrote. And if you're like, oh, I had this idea while I was writing, what do you think about this? Or they might say like, oh, I'm working on this scene. Let's talk about it. So that's kind of cool. It kind of makes writing, which is such a solitary endeavor, a bit more like, work environment, because you have someone to talk to. So that's been helping me a lot. So I think if it was just me by myself, I don't know if I'd be as driven, but it helps to have another person with me.
So where do you see yourself going? Like, where do you see this writing career going? Do you think you're going to keep on pursuing it?
Yeah, it's the dream for me. And so I just don't, God willing, I'm able to write for the rest of my life. Hopefully one day I can be successful enough to do it full time and not have to have the day job, So I just got to keep writing these books.
Well, if I can get you on part time at Walmart if you.
Yeah, exactly. You and me next to each other.
Yeah, do the weekend, and well, so now someone that's never read one of your books before, which one would you suggest they read to get to know what kind of a writer you are? Is that the new one you've got now?
Yeah, since that's the one out, let's say that one. If you are looking for something a lot more just fun, I would go with the day books, the Detective by Day books. But I have 3, so it wouldn't take long to read them all if they wanted to. But I like to think I'm getting better with each book. So I definitely think Like a Sister is my best work yet. And I'm hoping that the next one is even better. Right now it's not, because it's a crappy first draft. But, I think it's funny. I took them about 3 years, but I got the rights back to the 2 books in my series, and I self-published them in December. And when I was self-publishing them, I had to reread them. And I'm not that person who rereads their books, because I always want to make changes. And so I think about these books, more as this was the time in my life where I was at, and so I kind of put my emotional feelings on the book, which kind of makes, so I was surprised that I'm like, oh, these books are pretty good. It's not the worst thing on the planet, even though I felt like at that time I was depressed or XYZ, and that's how I felt when I was writing it. It doesn't really come off on the page. So I do think that the first two are good. The first one won, 4 awards, and the second one was nominated for 2 awards and was a Today Show Best Summer Read of 2019. So, they're good. They're good books for what they are. So I'm not going to say like they're the best books on the planet, but I'm proud of them. So
they're great. So you talk about the new book at all, or is that sort of something you don't like doing?
No, I don't mind talking about it. Basically, I mentioned. Yeah. So no. Yeah. When I went, a friend invited me to a writer's retreat at her house in Baltimore. And she was not in town, and she had a 4-story row house. And I was there by myself, and I thought I could go downstairs right now and find a dead body and not know how it got there. And her neighbors would be like, who's the black girl? Why did she kill somebody? And so that's the idea behind the book. This black woman and her boyfriend come up to Jersey City from Baltimore, and they're supposed to spend a romantic weekend in the New York City area. And she wakes up one day and her boyfriend's missing. And this white woman who's been missing and been all over the news for missing for a couple of days is dead in her foyer. And she does not know how the woman got there. And so, like I said before, the Gabby Petito case is interesting because they talk about like the idea of missing white woman syndrome when the media like latches on to this beautiful missing, woman, and it becomes like this huge news, which is good, but also if you think about it, women go missing every day. They don't make news. And like the Gabby Petito case, it was so interesting because you had like the TikTok sleuths and like people whose whole thing was like investigating the case, and there'd be sightings of the boyfriend Brian Laundrie and theories, and they weren't officers. So some of these theories were so outlandish, but they didn't seem to care if they were accurate or not, right? And so that's what happens is there's all these theories about what happened to the woman who's missing and who's now dead. And it's kind of like, how does that affect this innocent woman who came downstairs and found her in the foyer? He doesn't know what happened to her boyfriend. So that's kind of, I play with that a lot, with that social media element. So.
Yeah. Now, do you have social media, or do you like to interact with people on social media, or fans or readers, or do you have a website? How do people find you?
I have a website, which is very pretty because I paid someone to design it. But I am on all the social media platforms. My favorite's Twitter. If you like book stuff, follow me on Twitter because I talk about my book. I retweet everyone and their mom when it comes to my friends and their books coming out. I'm on Instagram. I traditionally have used Instagram to just stalk people and to just look at gossip, but I'm trying to get better with posting stuff. So I do post book stuff. I tend to forget my Facebook author page exists. What I tend to do is I'll just make my personal page. If I do a post on my book, I'll make it public so people can see it. But for me, Facebook is more like the most personal for me because I think I've had it the longest. So I have a lot of people who know me forever on there. So I don't want to it's like book. I don't want them to just like, God, Kelly's talking about her book again. So I try to do more personal stuff on there. I do keep that private though, just because I don't necessarily think the world needs to see how cute my niece and nephew are, although they're very cute. So yeah, I'm definitely on all the social media platforms. So.
Great. And you're doing TikTok dances for everyone?
No, that's actually the one I'm not on. I'm not on TikTok. I'm fascinated with it. I just don't see myself. I'm a writer. I'm not a performer. I'm a writer, so there's some authors who kill it when it comes to those skits and things and all of them. I'm just not, that's just not my personality. And I truly believe you should do what you find you enjoy when it comes to social media as an author. because otherwise it comes across as fake. And so I don't see myself being on TikTok, but maybe next week I'll change my mind and I'll be dancing.
Well, we have everything up on our website as well, so people can find you with one click when they're listening. So, get a few more followers, hopefully. How was the COVID? How was writing during COVID and even now, and with the war and anti-mask rallies and just all the weird stuff going on outside? Does that stress sort of affect your writing?
Yeah, I think it's hard for everyone, and I think we have to be kind to ourselves. We've just spent the last 2 years, the world has changed, and we thought it would be 2 weeks, right? And it's 2 years later, and it's still, it's still going on. And that's the thing, like, this is the new normal. We're not going back to normal. This is the new normal, right? On the flip side, though, I would have to commute to New York every day for work, and so I now have 2 hours, a day that I did not have before, that I can, work on my book stuff. Cause I try to keep it separate. Like, my day job is my day job. I don't work on my book during my day job, but when my day job's over, I try to focus fully on, on my book stuff. So that's been good for me. What I did is we sold my book on proposal. Because I was like to my agent, I'm like, I don't think I'm going to be able to finish this. So let's try to sell it on proposal. And luckily we were able to sell it in 5 days on proposal, which was nice. And it helps when you have a contract to finish. It makes it easier to write when you got a contract. So that's what I did. So.
Well, it's certainly been interesting to talk to you. And I appreciate you taking your time. I know you're busy and you got all these things going on and writing good books and everything. Our guest has got a new book out called Like a Sister, and Kellye Garrett. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Al. Thank you, John, for having me.
Thanks, Kellye.
Tired of wasting time trying to decide what to watch on your streaming service? Go to our website and look for the Martino movie reviews.
You've been listening to the House of Mystery radio show. To find out more about our guests, hosts, or shows, go to www.houseofmystery.com.
Show's over for now.
Was it as good for you as it was for me?
Yeah. Good night.
This has been a production of Something Weird Media.
I'll be back.